What's going on, everybody? It's Jay here from Nerd Takes, and today I'm bringing you my take on Godzilla Minus One. Now, to be totally transparent, I am not the most knowledgeable person out there when it comes to Godzilla lore. My first introduction to Godzilla was actually the Matthew Broderick movie from the late 90s, and I mean, that just wasn't a very good movie. Outside of that, there was the animated series that went along with that movie, which as a kid I enjoyed, but I've never actually gone back to review the quality of it, so I'm not totally sure how good that really was. But beyond those two products, there wasn't a ton of new things being done with the IP that got me to dive much deeper into the lore of Godzilla. And if I'm being honest, I just never really got the taste for the original movies, even though they were always something I respected given their iconic status in pop culture. From the end of the animated series, it wouldn't be till well over a decade later when they released the 2014 reboot of Godzilla that I started gaining interest in the IP again. The problem there was that movie left a lot to be desired. And frankly, although I enjoyed parts of some of those sequel movies in the shared universe with King Kong, those films had their issues as well. So, when the trailer first came out for Godzilla Minus One, it was something I was interested in, but wasn't totally sure if it was going to be significantly different from the recent reboot and sequels we had gotten over the last 10 years. But all the same, it definitely piqued my interest. Then, when the movie finally released, the hype surrounding it got me pretty excited to check it out and see what it was all about. So, I went, I saw the movie, and I have to say, I absolutely loved it. It was a totally different kind of movie from what we've seen from the American adaptations of Godzilla. For starters, you see Godzilla come in right from the start of this movie. There was no unnecessary waiting around to see him appear while the movie tries to entertain you with human characters that just don't really seem to click in terms of providing an interesting story, which always seems to be a fault of the American adaptations. So that was a really welcome change of pace to see them right out of the gate give the audience what they went there for, which was to see Godzilla and to see him do what Godzilla does, which is be an absolute force to be reckoned with. That part of it, just right from the jump, gets you into it and really makes it feel like something different than what we'd seen in the most recent iterations of this IP. Something else they established right from the beginning is the building of tension, and they do a phenomenal job at it. I mean, it's palpable. You can feel it right from the start. And they build the tension through some really great work, whether it be from the stellar acting, really good cinematography, the sound design, which I thought was something that really stood out in this film, where there's moments in this movie that are loud as anything, and you feel like you're amongst the people dealing with the chaos of Godzilla, to other parts where the film gets really quiet, almost as if to build that calm before the storm type of tension, which was just excellently done. Along with the sound design, the score itself was really good and brilliantly used as a tool to help add to the tension of the film. Another thing that also stood out was the human stories. I found myself to be super invested into these human stories and all these characters who were well developed, had a good amount of depth. Even the more minor characters of the movie had really impactful depth and stories to them, which I thought really helped kind of push along the movie in terms of the pacing between the times you do see Godzilla. You never really felt like, oh, when's Godzilla going to show back up while you were watching it? It was more like whenever Godzilla came onto the screen, it was awesome and he was a force and it was great. But being engaged in the human side of the story really made the film feel like a class above anything we'd seen recently from the Western interpretations of the IP. They even touch a bit on some complicated topics and ideas, such as the aftermath of the World War and what the Japanese citizens had to deal with in terms of the destruction from that alone. And it also touches on the idea of honor as it's prevalent in Japanese culture and the concept of a loss of honor and what that does to the mentality and the psyche of an individual who's affected by that, which I thought was very well done. It's also a story that goes into concepts like PTSD from a soldier's perspective, as well as survivor's guilt, which I thought were both written and acted excellently. It also delves into more positive human stories, like people coming together to achieve a common goal, as well as very strong family themes, which again, I thought were all very, very well done. Visually, I thought the movie was impressive, especially considering its relatively smaller budget as compared to the modern day blockbuster type of movie. They did a really good job with the CGI in creating a world where you could believe Godzilla existed and was rampaging through. They used some clever strategies that I think were chosen to help minimize the budget in terms of CGI. For example, using a lot of water scenes with Godzilla, but it wasn't just a case of, oh, I can tell they did this to try to lower the budget cost in terms of having to animate the entire Godzilla body and his path of destruction. It was done in a way that was logical in terms of the story itself. Without getting into spoilers there, it just made a lot of sense to have these scenes take place in the water versus in the middle of Tokyo or other surrounding cities of Japan. The pacing and runtime were both spot on for me. It didn't feel like any parts were too rushed or dragging along, nor did it feel like the movie needed to cut anything out or that it could have spent more time explaining something. I think both aspects felt like they were right where they needed to be. Overall, I have nothing but great things to say about this movie. I think it is one of the best, if not the best movie I've seen this year, and without a doubt, the best Godzilla movie I personally have ever seen. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back again with another review soon.